This is Wretched Radio. Joining us in studio all the way from Oklahoma, and he sure does look like it, the one and only Phil Johnson of Grace to You, wearing his natty. There's a cow that gave its life for your clothing today.
That's right.
That is a suede vest. You got your cowboy boots on. At least were they gluten-free cattle?
Probably
or
not.
Something. Did you rescue the cattle first?
No.
Then you're terrible and double terrible. Phil Johnson, Grace to You. You can also hear his sermons at Grace Life Pulpit, and you should if you haven't, because they are terrific. They will feed you because, well, that's what the word rightly preached does. And he's joining us in studio for a lot of fun today, Phil.
It is fun. It's always fun when I'm with you.
You're just gonna change your tune in a heartbeat. Let me. I'm not kidding. Let me tell you what we are up to. There is a woman who is an apologist for Islam.
Oh.
And she's teaching in public. She doesn't have a veil over her face, and I don't know if her brother is with her, but she's apparently a good Muslim with all those quibbles aside, and she's going to actually try to defend Mohammed's marrying of a 6-year-old girl, consummating the marriage at the age of 9.
Ooh, ouch.
You haven't heard this, have you?
I have not.
So this will be fresh for you.
It will. Well, it always is with you.
I'll play the clip, and then you comment, a woman, a Muslim, defending Muhammad's marrying of a 6-year-old.
According to hadiths, Aisha radiallahu anha did marry at age 6 or 7. She did consummate the marriage at age 9. And she did remain in this marriage until she was widowed for 9 years.
All right, let's just hold the phone right there. Marrying a 6-year-old, consummating at the age of 9. Is there anything that you can imagine that would make this not sickening?
No. I mean, that's very disturbing on every level.
Okay, but I'll try to argue it out a little bit. Just
Don't.
try to be
You'll ruin your reputation.
I'm not for it, of course, but there are some cultures where children aren't children. You know, they can be far more mature. Right. Some would argue that. Well, we don't get it because children are so childlike.
Yeah, but in any culture I know of, even historically, 9 years old is still a child.
Considered too young across the board culturally. There's no excuse for this.
Yeah.
All right. You're going to try to hear, but she's going to try to justify the events.
Am I disturbed by this? Should Muslims overall be disturbed by this?
Yeah, I'd just like to answer that rhetorical question.
Let's give it a big yes.
Yes and yes.
You know what makes me cringe here? Today, as we record this, is my eldest granddaughter's 9th birthday.
Oh, no.
And she is the sweetest little thing. And,
oh, no.
And just the thought of a 9-year-old being abused by an adult like that, even under the name of marriage, it just makes me angry.
That was not a good thing to consider, because when you personalize it like that, it sure does feel way, way wrong, as if it didn't before.
Was the marriage of Aisha wrong? Was the marriage of young Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, at age 6 in the Arabian Peninsula 1400 years ago, was it wrong at that time, at that place?
Yes.
We
Emphatically, yes.
Well, I'm just waiting for her to get to it. I know every speaker has a placeholder.
Yeah.
You know, a placeholder. Do you have any placeholders when you've lost your train of thought?
No,
you need to buy time.
If that happens to me, I just stand there looking stupid.
You want to hear the best one ever? Ray Comfort.
Yeah.
If he realizes he's kind of getting lost, he doesn't know where he's at on his manuscript, he'll say, I'd like to invite you now to please open up your Bible to Zechariah 2. Zechariah 2. And while they're paging frantically trying to find it, he looks at his notes, collects himself, and gets on with it. And then, but here's the best part. Everybody's sitting there with their Bible open to Zechariah 2, and he never goes to it.
That's Ray.
That is Ray Comfort indeed. Let's see if she's going to get to it.
History tells us, no. In its historical context, it was not wrong.
Wait. Whose history tells us that?
Well, I don't know. We're not getting any specificity here.
She's reading different history books from what I'm reading.
Well, is it wrong? No. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, but here's what she's trying to do. The argument I pretended to make was that culturally at that time, you don't understand. 6-year-olds were more mature and it wasn't uncommon. That seems to be her argument.
Yeah,
You're not buying it?
Nope, not at all.
All right, let's see if she can justify her claims.
Aisha was married at age 6. She remained living with her parents for 3 years until the age of 9, at which point, yes, the marriage was then consummated with the Prophet Mohammed, peace and blessings be upon him, when it was socially and morally considered acceptable by all concerned. That included her parents, that included the community around her, that included Prophet Muhammad's worst enemies.
All right, so everybody said thumbs up.
I don't believe it, but if that were true, even if that were true, you'd say that's a bad culture. There are evil aspects to every culture, and if that culture accepted that, that's still bad. If she had said, okay, they were married or betrothed or whatever at age 6 and didn't get married until 10 years later, I would say, okay, that's weird, but okay.
Right, a prearranged sort of affair.
Right, but age 9, that's before puberty. That's
just wrong. It's just plain wrong. You brought up something that I would like to get your comments on. Phil Johnson, grace to you and Grace Life Pulpit. Cultures being evil, some cultures being better than other cultures.
Yeah.
That is actually a sentence that you ought not utter these days to imply that some culture is better than another.
In fact, a statement to that effect was included in the social justice statement that was drafted in Dallas last year, and that, I think, probably got more negative feedback than any other.
Really?
Right, and it's a reflection of these postmodern times in which we live, where no truth is supposed to be deemed settled or fixed or permanent, and so when you're talking about different cultures, different religious beliefs, different views or whatever, you're supposed to believe in these postmodern times that they're all equal. They're all basically valid to whoever holds those views. So you can have pretty much any opinion you want, and nobody's supposed to say that's inferior.
All right, let me argue again. I don't believe a word I'm going to say, but I'm just going to argue this out, all right? Sure, it looks primitive to us that people run around naked on an island with a bone through their nose, but that's their culture. How dare you suggest that, and it's typically white European males, impose their culture on that culture?
Yeah, I mean, it's just that is a modern and postmodern notion that wouldn't have occurred to anybody, say, 150 years ago, and even as recently as 50 years ago. It's interesting. America was sending missionaries to, South America, and Jim Elliot and his team were killed by a primitive tribe who saw them as a threat and killed them. And that was all reported in the secular news at the time, and those men were considered heroic for being willing to sacrifice their lives to get the gospel to a culture that really was filled with violence and murder and adultery and all sorts of stuff. Now, recently, we've had this guy who tried to reach that island, in the Indian Ocean.
Excoriated. Look, it's a debatable issue, I grant you, but the tone was exactly the opposite.
Yeah, and it's a similar situation where he
I think of Robert Livingston, I presume. He went to Africa. They still herald him there.
Yeah.
Because he was a Christian who realized that if Christian ideals were permeated throughout society, it would improve culture.
Right, and his culture, both cultures deemed him heroic. His body is buried in Westminster Abbey. His heart is buried in Africa.
That's right. Yeah, because they thought his heart is here because of his sacrifice. It's strange to me that people can look at an image of an area of the world. It's headhunters.
Right.
They're killing it. They're cannibals. They're eating each other. And people would say, well, that's just the way they do things, and Western culture isn't any better. Come on.
Yeah.
It's clearly better. All right. This is the apologist she needs to apologize is right, defending Mohammed's marriage to a 6-year-old.
There was every opportunity for young Aisha to seek refuge with those enemies who would have given her immediate refuge against this marriage. But she didn't choose to do so, And it was never the case that she ever complained of it, even in her older, widowed years.
Well, so there you have it. She must have approved of it, too, as a
Yeah, I mean-
6-year-old.
That's ridiculous. If you know any 6-year-olds to 9-year-olds, they're
I know, that's not... That's, an age of consent. We don't let people, vote,
Yeah.
drink, drive, firearm, but they can decide about marriage.
right.
Is the argument here? Well, that is almost as lame as the argument these days that a 5-year-old can determine his or her gender.
Yeah.
Phil, here's my theory: always, 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 there is a woman behind that, and it's the mother that is behind the son who thinks he's a girl suddenly getting mutilated
Yeah.
at the age of 5.